pre-examination meeting. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the procedural arrangements for an inquiry in relation to an application by Renewable Energy Systems Limited for consent under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 and a direction under Section 57(2) of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997. The application proposes the construction and operation of a wind farm comprising up to 15 turbines up to a maximum height of 149.9 metres from ground to blade tip when vertical. The wind farm would be located on the Kintradwell estate near Brora in the Highlands. My name is Andrew Sykes. I'm a reporter with the Scottish Government's Planning and Environmental Appeals Division, generally referred to as the PEA. And I have been appointed by the Scottish Ministers to consider the application and report my findings and recommendations to them. Now, before I go any further, there are a few things I'd like to say about today's meeting. Firstly, as you'll all be aware, the meeting is being broadcast live to the DPA website. Now, the video record of the meeting will be retained on the website until the Scottish Ministers have taken a decision on this matter. In addition, by taking part in this virtual meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images and sound recordings and any information pertaining to them for webcasting and training purposes and for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Now, secondly, I know there's some concerns about poor broadband connectivity with the potential to disrupt participation in this meeting. If anybody is having any difficulty with their connection and is unable to follow proceedings, please let me know by raising or waving a hand. And if need be, we can take a short break to try and fix any problems. Also, once our introductions are complete, please feel free to turn off your videos and use audio only. As I mentioned a moment ago, the meeting is being recorded and you'll be able to review that once it's uploaded to the DPA website later today or tomorrow. Thirdly, and importantly, if you're part of a team participating in this meeting, there's more than one of you in a room, could I ask you please to ensure that you observe safe physical distancing from your colleagues at all times. Now, I don't envisage a need for a break during the meeting, but please just ask if anyone feels the need for a short break at a convenient point. Now, the purpose of today's meeting is solely to discuss the administrative arrangements for the inquiry and the prior disclosure of cases that parties intend to lead. There will be no discussion concerning the merits or otherwise of the application or of parties' cases. Now, you should have all received an agenda for today's meeting. It was issued a couple of weeks ago. And I thought it would be helpful to attach to the agenda a series of notes on the points that we need to discuss this morning. There's also an appendix that sets out my provisional assessment of the main issues to be addressed at the inquiry, which we will discuss shortly. I hope that has given parties time to consider these matters and hopefully it will make for a more effective meeting. Finally, and these opening remarks, although the situation with the pandemic has improved in recent months, I don't rule out the need for a second pre-examination meeting at some point to review any arrangements that we agree today, particularly should the situation change for the worse. A second pre-examination meeting would also allow the opportunity to check on progress with preparations for the inquiry. The DPA's most recent guidance notes on how it intends to work during the pandemic is available to view on the DPA website. It's dated February 2022. And we'll discuss the form the inquiry might take later on in this meeting. So before we go any further, is there any questions on my introductory remarks? Thank you. The second item is about introductions. I'd like to invite the main parties to introduce themselves. I will start with Renewable Energy Systems Limited, and I'll move on to the Council, followed by the Community Council, Loth residents, before moving on to any others that have indicated their wish to participate in the inquiry. So, Mr. Trinnick.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. My name is Marcus Trinnick. I'm a solicitor at Queen's Counsel. I'm instructed by Lizzie Tainch of Wright Johnson Mackenzie. You can see on your screen, who's also accompanied by, put your hand up please, Paula Batchelor, Project Manager for Scotland for RES, Simon Herriot of Savills, who will be the planning witness at the inquiry, and Danny McLean of RES, who works with Paula Batchelor. Thanks, Sam.
Good morning, sir. My name is James Finley, Queen's Counsel at both the Scottish and English bars. I'm representing two parties this morning. Firstly, Highland Council, and you have in attendance, I'm instructed by Karen Lyons, who's in attendance, but Simon Heinson, Peter Whelan and Anne Cowling. And just for your indication, in terms of evidence giving, Mr. Heinson will be dealing with the policy evidence, and Peter Whelan and Anne Cowling will both be giving evidence on the landscape and visual session, which is anticipated. And Simon Heinson will also be dealing with conditions. I'm also instructed by Loth Residents Association, who I think appear today by Diana Royce, who's the chair, and John Whitfield, who's the secretary. And also in attendance, I see, I think, is Michelle Bolger, who's due to give planning landscape and visual evidence. And I will have something to say, more to say in due course about other aspects in which Loth residents may wish to be involved and how they may be best involved, subject to your agreement.
Thank you very much. Do we have Mr. Udebert Pereira for the Community Council? Sorry, I can't hear you. You might have your...
Apologies, hit wrong button. I'm here representing Brora Community Council.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we were meant to be joined by Dr. Valentovitz, but I'm told he's had a power cut in his locality, so unfortunately he's not able to join us. But I do know he's been in contact with Ms. Royce. I don't know, Ms. Royce, if you're able to say whether it is Dr. Valentovitz's intention to participate in the inquiry.
I think Mr. Valentovitz has decided to join with Loth residents and to ask us to present his concerns.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll follow this up separately with him anyway, but thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you.
Now, is there anybody else on the call that I've not noticed who wishes to participate in the inquiry process? I'm just going to say a few words about the code of practice for handling inquiries under the Electricity Act. As I mentioned in my notes of the agenda, there are no prescribed rules for the conduct of inquiries under the Electricity Act. The procedure to be followed is a matter for me and my fellow reporters. In this case, we'll be dealing with the inquiry in accordance with the Code of Practice for Electricity Act cases. And that Code of Practice is available to view on the DPA website. Essentially, this approach allows flexible procedures to be adopted. Each issue can be dealt with by the most appropriate method of examination. This could be an inquiry session, a hearing session, or it could be through the exchange of further written submissions. On some issues, sufficient information will already have been lodged. No further procedures will be required. I'll explain the difference between those procedures later on in the meeting if need be. When I write my report to Scottish ministers, I'll take account of all the environmental information submitted by the applicant, together with all the consultation responses and letters of representation already lodged. The type of procedure followed, or the absence of any further procedure, is not an indication of the importance of a particular issue. Any questions about the code of practice? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4 on the agenda. My provisional assessment of the main issues to be addressed in my report to the Scottish ministers those requiring further procedure is summarised in the appendix attached to the agenda. Before discussing how we might proceed, I wonder if I could ask the parties for their views on the list of topics. Is there anything missing from that list? Mr. Trinick.
No, sir, not missing.
Mr. Finlay?
No, sir, not missing.
Okay. And then Mr. Udorej Pereira?
Same.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, I'd like the parties' views on my assessment of the suggested procedures for each of the topics and the issues to be addressed. Thinking first about landscape and visual impact. Having reviewed the application, I consider the evidence presented by the applicant and challenged by the council and others is best tested through an inquiry session. If I could ask the applicant for its comments on this suggestion and the matters to be addressed before I hear from the council. Anybody else who wishes to speak? So, Mr. Trinick.
Agreed on both counts.
Thank you. Mr. Finlay?
So as to the landscape and visual matters, yes, I've noted both on behalf of Highland Council and Loth residents, we consider that an inquiry session is important, and we've looked at your guidance notes as to what that landscape and visual amenity might take into account. There's one matter that perhaps is best raised at this stage. You've put down cumulative landscape effects. Cumulative visual impacts will also be a matter of importance. And primarily wearing my Loth residence hat, but noting that it's been dealt with by Nature Scotland, Highland Council, we note the absence of cumulative material dealing with the offshore wind farms that are proposed, whereas that would appear to be an issue that you will have to consider. And we'd ask you to give some consideration as to whether you'd be assisted by further information on that regard from the applicants. We're not thinking of photomontages, but possibly wire lines. I think the Murray West appears on one figure only, and it may be mismarked as Beatrice wind farm. But it's really a matter for you. Wearing my Highland Council hat, we can supply material that will assist you, but it won't be necessarily from the same viewpoints. So subject to that particular point, we're happy both with the inquiry session and the suggested scope of that procedure.
Thank you. Would now be an appropriate time just to get your thoughts on the prospect of additional information?
Yes, so we're always happy to provide additional information if we know exactly what we're being asked to produce. So my suggestion is that Mr. Finley's team should communicate with Wright Johnson Mackenzie, specifying exactly what it is they would like to see, and then no doubt we can provide it. Provided it doesn't go, we don't go beyond wire lines into photomontages. So that's the invitation.
Okay, well, I'll give this matter some further thought, and I'll address it in my note of the meeting.
So can I respond to that by saying yes, that I'm sure both Highland Council and Loth residents can produce a list of viewpoints where it may be of assistance, and wire lines should be sufficient. So I don't think it's going to be an onerous requirement, but it does seem to us that it may assist you, given that you're going to have an inquiry session on it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Udorej Pereira, your thoughts on holding an inquiry session for the landscape and visual effects of the proposed development?
Fully supportive in line with the Loth residents.
Thank you very much. planning policy, energy policy, my assessment is that energy and planning policy matters are dealt with at a hearing session. And I would add that following receipt of statements, it would be my intention to issue a detailed agenda with specific questions to assist me in the preparation of my report. So again, Mr. Trinick, can I ask you for your suggestion or your thoughts and comments on holding a hearing session to consider energy and planning policy matters?
We agree with the hearing session. It's the appropriate way of dealing with this. We welcome the idea of a detailed agenda. We'd even suggest you issue a draft agenda for comment, because it may be that we can add things that you would agree to put on the agenda, so we end up with a finalised agenda in due course. In terms of the topics listed on page 4 for discussion of your pre-examination bundle, I suspect that there won't be a lot of discussion about the development plans. I suspect that there will be a big focus on net zero, and perhaps by then, who knows, in October or November, on draft or actual MPF4. So you ought to keep our eyes open for what's happening down the line on that topic.
Your comments.
Yes, sorry, so I was just unmuting myself. Yes, first of all, on behalf of Highland Council, content with their hearing session and the matters that you've raised there. Likewise, on behalf of Loth residents, but I have a little bit more to add on that regard. You'll have seen their form that they sent in yesterday, raising a number of issues. And certainly in Highland Council and indeed Loth residents' experience from previous inquiries under policy matters, although I note that it's not Mr. Bell but Mr. Hewitt who's giving planning evidence, one tends to, applicants tend to set out the benefits that will be provided, assessed against policy, and indeed Mr. Trinick's already referred to the draft MPF4 and the current climate crisis. You will have seen on the form that Loth residents were keen to discuss both local wind energy contribution barriers to deployment of constraint payments. Whilst we don't wish to raise that as a specific matter of objection itself, it does appear to us that it is a relevant consideration as to the benefits that you give to the contributions to dealing with the need for more renewable energy and dealing with the climate crisis, as to how much of a benefit there will be. So we'd like to raise that not as a specific session, but as by way of contribution to the policy session. I don't think it should be a lengthy contribution, but it's a point Loth residents don't wish to get overlooked, and it seems in that balancing act that may be the most effective way of dealing with it. Likewise, local economics, recreation and tourism, Loth residents are quite realistic as to the, and those who they represent are quite realistic as to the impact of that, but again, set against would wish it to be taken into account when set against the economic benefits. They've had the advantage, and I don't know whether you've had the opportunity to read Karen Hayward's report for the West Garty inquiry at which they appeared, where there was a session on local economics, recreation and tourism. They're not seeking such a session at this stage, but simply to make their submission so that when you are balancing the benefits and disbenefits, that issue is not lost either. So it's seeking to do it in a streamlined fashion, but not to have them lost sight of altogether. So it's in those Two Senses Lost residents, as they've indicated in their form, would wish to be part of the planning policy session, but with that particular aim in mind, and hopefully to deal with them in a way that is proportionate to the issues concerned.
Do you have any thoughts on broadening the policy session to include the matters that Mr. Finley just mentioned?
Perfectly content to discuss those topics.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Finley, I'll certainly give that some thought, and again, I'll address that in the note of the meeting. I certainly hear what you say, and I am familiar with the West Garty decision, so I'll certainly refresh myself and have a look at that before I write the note. Okay, thank you.
I'm grateful.
Thinking of planning, sorry, Mr. Udueres Pereira. Your thoughts on holding a hearing session to talk about energy and planning policy matters. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Exceptionally supportive and very much in line with Mr. Finley's submission.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, thinking about planning conditions, I'm also suggesting that we discuss a draft set of conditions that may be required at a hearing session. I would say, for the benefit of the Community Council and other parties, this does not infer any intention on my part to recommend that consent should be granted to the application. Rather, it's for the benefit of planning ministers when they come to consider my report and to assist them should they decide to grant consent. As indicated in my note, the expectation would be that the applicant will liaise with the council and other relevant interests to draft a set of conditions and to present them in a written statement, highlighting the points of disagreement and any alternative positions adopted by the parties. So, Mr. Trinity, I wonder if I could ask you first if you're content with that approach.
Yes, entirely content. I believe that the ECU is bringing out a new set of standard conditions to replace those with which I was very unhappy to work in the past. And having seen the draft, I think the new set looks a lot more promising. So if we can take the lead in producing some conditions, but maybe wait for a week or two to see when the ECU new set are coming out. So if you will give us time to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Finley.
Absolutely. On behalf of Highland Council, that's entirely sensible, and it's a mechanism that we're quite familiar with. I think on behalf of Loth residents, we'd simply, at this stage, perhaps not intending to have a significant input, but would wish to reserve our position in case some input is required.
Udueres Pereira, do you have any thoughts on?
No, just very supportive in line again with residents and Mr. Finley.
Okay, thank you very much. Speaking about ornithology, I anticipate being able to deal with outstanding ornithology matters by way of further written submissions. I note the applicant is presently undertaking further ornithological surveys and that additional information is in prospect. Mr. Trinning, I wonder if you could update me on this matter, please. I think I'd also be interested to hear what you have to say about how the additional information is best dealt with, ensuring that all the relevant interests are informed and have an opportunity to comment on it.
Thank you. So yes, surveys are being carried out at present. The final report of those surveys is due sometime in August. The report can be prepared by the end of August for circulation. Obviously, there will be some confidential elements to that report, given the species being studied. But subject to that, I think it does need, the report will need to be treated as environmental information for statutory purposes. And I would invite you to require the information for the purposes of the inquiry, which means it won't need to be advertised. It'll be required for those purposes. If you'd like to do that, we'd be grateful.
thoughts on the matter?
I believe on behalf of Highland Council, we have no particular wish to be further involved, although we will be at least keep an eye on the information, so perhaps just simply a watch and brief. On behalf of Loth residents, we'd certainly wish to have the opportunity to put written submissions in. I understand the timetable that Mr. Trinick's referred to, and indeed the need for certain material to be kept private. If needs be, I think Loth residents are still considering their position. If they wish to have access to the redacted material, no doubt that can be dealt with suitable undertakings in due course being given. And so subject to a sensible timetable, I think that's acceptable to Loth residents.
So if I can just come in there, I note that Dr. Tony Belenkovitz is a member with the Loth Residents Association, being associated. I also understand he is an expert ornithologist, so it may well be that we can deal with matters of confidential material appropriately at a later stage, and we'll discuss matters with Mr. Finley's team.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you very much. Luis Pereira, do you have any comments on how outstanding matters on ornithology are addressed?
More than happy to go along with the advice of Mr. Finley.
Okay, thank you. No doubt we'll come back to the impact that the submission of that information in August, how that might impact on the overall timetable for the inquiry. So we'll come on to that. Just one final thing to say about written submissions, just to make people aware that it is open to me to seek further written submissions on any particular topic or topics at any stage throughout the proceedings. But at the present time, I'm not seeing any particular need for further written subs.
So there is one point.
I beg your pardon, sorry. Yes.
Note that the Loth Residents Association have listed access and transport. One of the topics they would like to deal with by written submissions. We're quite content with that, but that does need you to prescribe a process for the receipt of those written representations, and a process for the applicant to have a right of reply with a timetable.
So if I can add, unless I'm informed otherwise, I don't believe there's a specific requirement to put written submissions in specifically on traffic and transport. The access, yes, but access, it's the landscape and visual implications of access that are the real issue, and they can be dealt with under the landscape and visual session. Unless I've misunderstood the position, there's no need for a specific access hearing, and traffic and transport, I don't believe we wish to put, wearing my Loth residents hat, wish to put further written submissions in on.
I'd like to come back on that, Mr. Trinick.
That's fine, sir. I was building what I said, not only on the position statement just received, but on the April 2021 from memory Loth Residents Association submission, where things were said about access other than in terms of landscape and visual amenity, i.e. about road safety and delays and what have you. So if no more needs to be said about that, that's fine. We'll deal with matters as Mr. Finley suggests.
So I'm grateful for that. I think Loth residents have made their point on that. They're not resiling from it, but I don't think there's a need for further material on it. And indeed, so that Mr. Trinick's jumped forward, I can say that that goes from Loth residents for all the other no further procedure points, subject to the submissions I made on the energy and policy consideration hearing session.
Okay, that's super. With regard to the Community Council, Mr. Udrich Pereira, is there any thought on the other topics that are listed on the appendix?
The access and obviously vehicular access and extra traffic obviously will remain a concern for Borough Community Council.
Moving on to item 5 on the agenda. This is about the participation of parties in further procedure. Now, I'd like to discuss who wishes to take part in the procedures that we've just discussed. I don't know if anybody on the call would find it a benefit to me to describe the differences between the inquiry sessions or the hearing sessions, for those of you who are not familiar. Mr. Udrich Pereira, are you reasonably familiar with what we intend when we talk about inquiry sessions as opposed to hearing sessions?
I've been made aware.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. As I mentioned in my notes, the DPA is keen to find the best way for interested parties to make a meaningful contribution to the proceedings. I don't wish to discourage anybody from giving evidence at the inquiry, but we do strongly recommend that parties and individuals join together where they share the same point of view. And I can already see that there's been some discussions about that, and some groups have coalesced. Now, this allows for the presentation of a coordinated case, avoids unnecessary duplication of effort, and enables the pooling of resources. So with that in mind, I'd like to discuss participation in the inquiry session on landscape and visual impact. I'm assuming that the applicant and council will take part. Mr. Finlay, perhaps now is an opportunity for you to discuss or just let me know the intentions of the lost residents in terms of that session.
Yes. I think, as I mentioned earlier, they have a landscape professional, Michelle Bolger, who, when you refresh your memory on West Garter, you'll see that she gave evidence at that inquiry too. And whilst there'll be certain matters that are almost inevitably be discussed by both, she will be preparing her evidence with an eye to coordination with the Highland Council. I don't think I'd put it stronger than that, but with an idea that repetition is avoided and that you are given material, perhaps from a different perspective or whatever, that will be of assistance to you without taking unnecessary time in doing so. We're conscious on behalf of Loth residents that she will come last in the professional witnesses, and no doubt her presentation will be prepared with that role in mind. You will be quite familiar, if not before, by the time you get to her, with many of the issues between the parties. But hopefully we will, that whilst it may add a little bit further time, it will not unduly increase the time required, but it is a matter about which Loth residents specifically wish to be heard and to give their particular view via their expert.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say in response?
No, I think if there's coordination and it's made clear where the Loth residents may depart to any extent from the position of Highland Council, given they've got common representation through an advocate, that to me is the most important thing. I need to know whether there are any differences between the position of those two parties, and I'm sure that'll become clear through the witness of the evidence of the witnesses.
Mr. Udrich Pereira, does the Community Council wish to take part in the landscape and visual session? Perhaps you could indicate whether you do so as individually, or whether you want to join up with, or is there any scope for you to join up with other parties?
I'm just thinking whether it may be advantageous to join up perhaps with the Loth residents and Mr. Finlay, as we're closely aligned anyway.
Okay, I'm sure you can have those discussions kind of offline, and
yes.
There'll be an opportunity for you to comment once I've issued the note of this meeting. There'll be a time period in which you can have to consider how you might participate, and to let me know accordingly.
Thank you very much.
At the inquiry session, it would be my intention to hear the applicant first, followed by the council, obviously the loft residents, and then the community council if need be. And I will in due course establish with Dr. Valentovitz what his involvement might be, if any. Okay. Is that what sequence? Are you content with that sequence, Mr. Trinick? Yes, that's it. Turning to the hearing sessions on policy matters and draft conditions, again, I would expect the council and the applicant to participate in both sessions. I think that's the case. Yes, super. Perhaps I could ask, again, the community council whether they would intend to participate in either of those sessions. Mr. Udrich Pereira.
I would need to seek, go back to my members and seek advice on that one. I would suggest that we would want some form of engagement.
Like I say, there will be an opportunity, or there'll be a period of time after you receive the note of the meeting for you to, to come to a view on whether you want to participate in those sessions or not.
Thank you very much.
I was just going to say something briefly about closing submissions.
So just in case it's not lost, I just formally confirm that Loth residents would want to be involved with both those sessions, which I think you'd probably anticipated anyway. But
thank you. Yes, I'd overlooked that. So thank you for confirming that, Mr. Finlay. Thank you. As I mentioned, closing submissions. Once all the evidence has been heard, parties will be invited to make closing submissions. Closing submission should address each party's position on all aspects of the proposal, not just those that have been subject to oral process. Now, while there may be public interest which could justify reading the submissions out at the close of the inquiry, I think it's worth considering whether parties would be content with a written exchange. This would have the advantage of parties being able to have a short time to reflect on the evidence before preparing their closing submissions. And the submissions would be lodged in the same sequence if they were being presented orally. So the objectors first, the council, any supporters of the application, and then finally the applicant. And they should also be circulated to those parties presenting closing statements. And of course, they will be posted on the DPEA website. We would agree a date for the submission of closing submissions at the end of the inquiry. So parties content with that, Mr. Trenning, Mr. Fenley? Yes.
Yes, sir. Are you going to raise the topic of case summaries?
I hadn't specifically made a comment here, but yes, I mean, this is an opportunity in the closing submissions to summarise the case so that I can, in effect, take what is being said in the closing submissions and put that directly into my report. Is that what you're alluding to, Mr. Trenick?
I wish I hadn't raised it tonight. Sorry, Mr. Finlay, I apologise. It's not something we love, but it has been requested invariably in the recent inquiries. Quite happy to provide a case summary at the front end of the closing submissions and therefore at the same time, provided it's recognised that the case summary is very far from being a full closing submission. The closing submission needs to be read in full and not just the case summary. On that basis, happy to provide one. And I wish I hadn't raised it.
Dare I ask Mr. Finlay if you have any comments?
I agree with Mr. Trenick in every one of his comments.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 6 is about dates and duration of the inquiry and hearing sessions. So if I could ask you to have your diaries in front of you. The indicative inquiry timeline suggests an inquiry start the week beginning the 31st of October later this year. I think you've all done this through your position statements, and it appears that you are all available for an inquiry start that week. And I would say if we do meet in person, I'm more than happy to move to a Tuesday start rather than the Monday of that week. So Mr. Trinick, perhaps you could confirm the applicant's position on dates, and then we'll move on to
Yes.
talk about how long it might take to present evidence.
I think the parties are all moving together towards a start in the week of 31st October. I'm happy to start on the Monday or Tuesday, but Tuesday would be nice. I think the duration, having discussed matters with Mr. Finlay, we should allow 4 days. So Tuesday to Friday would work, or Monday to Thursday, whichever you want. And I'm going to put a marker now that I see no reason at all why we should not have an in-person inquiry. And I obviously wait for the views of other parties. I don't want to make the case so strongly if I don't need to. But I think given the evidence in recent inquiries, which has been palpable broadband issues, coupled with the fact we have a residents' association in the area who I think should have an in-person inquiry if they want it, that's where we should be going. So that's my vote.
Thank you. Yes, I'm alive to those issues and those thoughts. Mr. Finlay, your thoughts on start time, inquiry start date, and duration of presenting evidence?
Yes, week of the 31st, whether Monday or Tuesday, Mr. Trinick accurately records our discussion that we think it's 4 days. I mean, just to break that down a bit, I think 2.5 days for landscape and visual, and up to 1.5 days for the other matters, although conditions could be quite short, and indeed policy and other matters could be quite short. So, but I think we will slip into the 4th day, come what may. Just with we'll have 4 witnesses for the landscape and visual session. Start date, I think I've dealt with. So, and that's on behalf of both Highland Council and Loth residents. In terms of the other matter that Mr. Trinick raised, Highland Council, I think, is still broadly neutral as to whether it should be in person or otherwise, but it certainly doesn't resist an in-person inquiry. Loth residents are strongly in favour of an in-person inquiry. There is a ample local interest, and this is just the sort of inquiry that in our submission should be in person, acting on behalf of Loth residents.
Thank you. On behalf of the Community Council, Mr. Udrich Pereira, your thoughts on an inquiry start the week beginning October the 31st, and the time that the inquiry might take to present evidence or to hear evidence?
The time and the dates are fine. No issue about the length of the hearing at all. No issue at all. I'd just like to say, obviously, from Community Council perspective, we fully support an in-person inquiry within the area.
Just to say that it would be my intention to start with the inquiry session before moving to the hearing sessions, policy first, and then the draft conditions. And I would hope that we can move through the topics as you both alluded to, without any breaks in the programme. I'll include a draft timetable for the oral sessions in my note of the meeting. Right, thank you for that. Item 7 is about timetable for submission of documents and other submissions. So there are a number of written exchanges that need to take place before the inquiry and hearing sessions commence, to ensure that each party is fully aware of the case to be made by those on the other side of the argument. Parties taking part in oral procedures will therefore need to disclose the cases they intend to lead in advance. Again, if you look at the notes accompanying the agenda, note 7 indicates the material that's required and to be submitted by particular weeks in advance or after this meeting. So it might be helpful to have those in front of you. And in an attempt to be efficient to minimise the time between the receipt of an application and the holding of an inquiry, the process and timescales referred to may differ. Although I have been involved in inquiries with both you, Mr. Trinick, and Mr. Finlay, where we've used this timescale, it may differ from those that have been used in the past. So, starting with actions initiated by today's meeting, I wanted to say a few things about core documents. A first draft of the core documents list is be submitted in 2 weeks' time. So that's by the 6th of July. And a final core documents list is submitted 6 weeks in advance of the inquiry start date. We'll assume 31st of October at the moment. And that would mean a final documents list by the 19th of September. Now, my expectation is the applicant will liaise with the council and other parties to produce a single core documents list and decide who should produce what. There's certainly no need for documents to be multiple copies of certain documents. Now, the DPE holds a number of frequently referred to documents in the core documents library. And again, I know you both, Mr. Finley and Mr. Trinnick, are familiar with the documents library. So I don't anticipate any difficulties whatsoever. This allows participants to provide a hyperlink to documents located in the library, rather than submitting a separate PDF or hard copy document. Now, I think what will differ from my recent experience of being in inquiries with you both is that to assist the inquiry, it'll be the DPA that will upload all the documents onto a single memory stick for use by each party participating at the inquiry. I don't know, Mr. Uda, if you have any comments on that. I could say a little bit more about our documents library, or I could just put a fairly detailed note in the note of this meeting to explain how we might assist you in putting a documents list together that you would wish to refer to if you were to participate in the inquiry session.
It seems fairly straightforward. You could do that. Seems very similar to what I do in my day job at university.
Okay, that's super. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sarah, if I could just come in there. I welcome the use of USBs as opposed to simply relying on hyperlinks, because during an inquiry, if you're doing it electronically, actually accessing a document via a USB is a lot quicker than going through the two-step process of a hyperlink. So we prefer that. Very happy to be provided with a free USB by the DPEA. That's nice, but so long as it's not passworded, iMac absolutely hates passworded USBs.
Okay. I'll certainly take that up and address that matter before I issue the note to the meeting, just to give you certainty over that.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Any comments, Mr. Finlay, or you're quite content?
If I could just, I know it's repetition, but echo Mr. Trinnick's points that on the USB, it's very helpful to have all the documents, because hyperlinks documents on a USB are unhelpful. And I'm grateful for the offer for USBs from the DPA. It may be that we'd need a number, but we can perhaps come back to you on that. Yes, just reiterate those points. I also agree with Mr. Trinnick about passwords, although perhaps not with such the same force as he has made that comment. But certainly about the having every document available on the USB is really helpful.
Certainly, my experience, previous inquiries, it has worked very well, and I've had no difficulty finding material very quickly during the course of oral sessions. So that's good. I've taken these things in order from today's dates. A draft conditions schedule should also be submitted by the 6th of July.
With apologies, so can I just come back to timing? It's when you said 6th July. That actually is quite tight, given the fact I know that we have certain people leave in our team. And I wonder if you would give us until the 20th of July to provide that first draft of the CD list.
Okay. Fine. Okay.
And I cannot make the same request, at least maybe even the 27th of July, so far as the draft conditions are concerned.
results in a better submission, then yes, I'm more than happy to agree to that. We've touched upon further submissions. Certainly ornithology, but that's got its own timescale, hasn't it? So I'm not picking up the need at the moment for any further written submissions. So I'll leave that. We certainly haven't discussed at any point so far statements of agreement between the parties. So that's the applicant, the council, and the applicant and others. I certainly find these very helpful. They certainly narrow down the issues into focus that we need to consider at the inquiry. So the timetable has these submitted 7 weeks after today's meeting, which takes us into early August. Mr. Trinick, is that something that is that a date you think you could meet?
No, so we can't. It's a very valuable exercise, and we will prepare the draft statement, and there are templates we can use from previous inquiries. That's not difficult, but in order to make it useful, I'm going to ask for the second week in August to submit the draft for comments by the council and by the Loth Residents Association and the Community Council. At least, so the Highland Council in the first instance, and then see where we go from there.
Okay. So where does that take us to? You said so a draft by the second week in August.
Yes, I haven't got my calendar in front of me, but whatever date that is.
Okay, well, there's Monday the 15th is the third week, so you'd need some time to respond to.
Yeah, we can do it
comments.
by the Friday before that and take it from there. The 12th of August, we will have it out for the views of others.
Okay. And do you think a week to turn that around, or 2 weeks to turn that? Sorry, then suggesting you might need a further week or two to finalise that.
We will, but certainly current experience is that these documents develop better when witnesses' thoughts are turning to evidence, rather than try to do them in abstract before you even start writing the evidence. So I think if we set it for that sort of timeline, that will work in well with what else we're doing to prepare for the inquiry.
So if I could add that if the draft comes out then, and we aim to get a final version in at the same time as the reports, so 8 weeks before, I think that roughly works. But yes,
that'll be the 5th of September, 8 weeks before the inquiry start.
So I echo Mr. Trinick's comment that you get a better statement of agreed matters if witnesses are preparing their reports at the same time, and indeed it can be very useful to the witnesses to know what's agreed and not agreed.
This is on to statements. So inquiry statements submitted 8 weeks in advance of the inquiry. That's the 5th of September, as I mentioned. Now, statements should outline the case to be argued, list the documents that are to be relied upon, and the witnesses to speak at the inquiry, including topics that each will cover. And of course, it would also be helpful to know who will be leading the case and the cross-examination of the witnesses. Okay, thank you. Similarly, with hearing statements, those taking part in the hearing sessions, statements should also be submitted 8 weeks in advance of the inquiry. That's again 5th September. The statement should provide full details of the case to be put forward, list the documents that will be referred to, and specify the witnesses that will be taking part in the discussion.
So just on that, I would rather have the hearing statements being submitted at the same time as inquiry reports, or rather at the same time as documents. That is 4 weeks before the inquiry, because the The person who writes the policy hearing statement inevitably draws on what is written in the inquiry report. They tend to run together, and I would prefer a common 4-week date for hearing statements and inquiry reports.
So that's, in terms of dates, where does that take us, Mr. Trinick?
I'll look up the calendar. 4 weeks before the inquiry, whatever that is. Yeah. So,
3rd of October.
yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's definitely helpful to have as few dates in the timetable as possible, so that if inquiry statements were 8 weeks beforehand, and then hearing statements and documents were both 4 weeks beforehand, that is a very useful timetable, and then precognitions 2 weeks beforehand.
The 2 weeks for precognitions, you're okay with that? Yes, super.
Yeah.
Right, I will put that into a table with those dates, and please do come back to me if I've misunderstood anything or in terms of dates there. But I think I've captured everything you've just said. But that's grand. Thank you. Okay, now we've touched upon this venue. If the inquiry is to be held in person, and I very much hope it can be, it would be sensible, even at this early stage, to give some thought to a suitable venue, bearing in mind the guidance that we have set out in our updated notes that I referred to earlier. For example, somewhere large enough to be able to adhere to physical distancing requirements and other measures that may be put in place. So if there are some suggestions where an inquiry might be held, my office would be more than happy to kind of follow up with suggestions, and we can discuss arrangements in detail if we ought to have a second pre-examination meeting. So, Mr. Trinick.
Probably best dealt with by emails afterwards, but we know there are various usual suspect venues in the area which have been used before. Do you mind if we discuss this offline and come back to you?
Yeah, sure, no problems at all. I mean, this just reminds me, actually, we didn't actually, I don't think it would be helpful to kind of pencil in a date for a possible second pre-examination meeting. When I was thinking about this, I thought perhaps early September or to the middle of September might be a useful time. Mr. Trinick, have you got any thoughts if we were to hold a second, and it need not be a lengthy meeting, when that might be best held?
Well, let's get it in the diary, even if we don't need it, and then it's there. So I'm in other people's hands to some degree. Early September looks pretty good.
Okay. Any thoughts, Mr. Finley, or shall I just choose a date in early September?
So it may be, if the reports are due on the 5th of September, maybe later that week of the 5th of September, which I have free at the moment.
So,
and can I say, in terms of location, speaking on behalf of Loth residents, this is, in our view, as I understand it, more of a Brora wind farm rather than a Helmsdale wind farm. So in terms of local residents, our view is that it should be more likely to be held in a location, if it is to be an in-person inquiry, in the vicinity of Brora rather than Helmsdale, where Westgarty was held. And that I know that Diana Royce has been doing some investigations to venues, and she can email your office with the suggestions that we've come up with.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you. Just thinking about the deposit of documents, the provisions of, if I've understood this correctly, the provisions of the Coronavirus Scotland Act 2020 that suspended the statutory requirement to make documents physically available for public inspection, and they're due to expire on the 24th of September. The indicative inquiry timetable requires documents to be lodged 6 weeks prior to the start of the inquiry, which would be the 19th of September. Now, whether or not the provisions of the Act are extended, it will be necessary to make arrangements to place all the relevant material in connection with the application on deposit. So should the provisions be extended, as you know, the view of the DPA is that it is sufficient to give notice as to whether documents relating to the application can be viewed, albeit electronically. Now, if physical documents are to be made available, the applicant and the council should liaise to ensure that documents are deposited locally and kept up to date. All material should then be made available at the inquiry venue when it's in a session, and hopefully that will be the case when it sits in person. And again, we can discuss that in a little bit more detail when we come to have our second pre-examination meeting in early September, given the present uncertainty. Thoughts on that, Mr. Trinick, about the, I think I've got the document, the dates right. I had a good look online about the provisions of that Act. Yeah.
Probably best dealt with at a later date once we know more. But if it were possible to deal with matters electronically, we are happy. But I think we're in the hands of Loss Residents Association. If they would like the physical deposit, then of course we will agree.
Okay, super. Ms. Finlay?
Well, firstly, I think it's probably best dealt with at the second PEM because we'll be much greater certainty then. I'll take a view from the Residents Association as to what their view is. I can't hazard a view on that at the moment, but perhaps it may be an appropriate time just to raise the query that I think was raised by email by Diana Royce yesterday about the whereabouts of the objection and indeed supporting letters, which I think are on not on the DPEA website, but are on the ECDU website, just to check that they're not lost in the post, so to speak.
Well, I was copied into the email exchange between my colleague Karen Cowie and Ms. Royce, and I did check the external websites, and I was able to locate them. And I have read a good number. Certainly, I have read the one from Loft Residents and others that indicated they might be taking part in this. Since then, I think my colleague Karen has responded to Ms. Royce with a series of screenshots to show how you access them. They're labelled list of representations, and when you open that file, they're all there in sequence. So I can see them. That doesn't mean that people accessing it from out with, I can't guarantee that they would see them, but we'll liaise with her further just to make sure that she can access them. But I'm quite confident that they're there. I don't know if Miss Royce wants to say something.
Just that I realise that they are there, but who would know how to get to them?
Well, yes, you're quite right. There are a lot of files. There are a lot of files, and it's about how the file is labelled and where it's placed in the order. I think you have to go through about 6 pages, 6 different screens to get to where it's listed. So perhaps I could have a word with my office and see if we can make the title of the file clearer and perhaps place it at the top of the list.
Yes, I think if you look at the ECU site, I mean, I'm very experienced in accessing these sites, and if I can't find them, how would anybody else find them? This is a public inquiry. We have to think about public in all these things. And on the ECU site, there is a tab which says representations. Why don't you just have a tab which says representations? Because who would know to search?
Yes, you're right. I think there is a search facility where you can put in representations, but it would be a lot easier if there was a separate tab along with the others. Clearly marked it. Let me take that up with my colleagues, and well, we can liaise by email just to let you know what we've done to try and make accessing these representations easier.
Thank you very much.
That's very helpful. Can I just say that obviously we know you've got access to them, but it would be important for those who've made the representations to be able to check that their representation has got onto the list, and that's the sort of matter that we're thinking of. But your suggestions appear to be sensible, and yes, please take that up so that they're easily accessible and checkable.
Okay, super. Okay, almost there. Turning to site inspections, item 8. Before the start of the inquiry, hopefully sometime next month, I'll make an unaccompanied inspection of the site and its surroundings, including some or all of the viewpoints referred to in the Environmental Impact Assessment Report and in representations. Although some of the vantage points will probably require me to get a little fitter, but I'll work on that. So either during the inquiry or at the end of the proceedings, I'll also make an accompanied inspection, which parties will be able to attend, subject to any restrictions that may be enforced at the time, of course. And if parties would find it helpful, I'd also be happy to conduct an accompanied inspection prior to the inquiry to ensure that I'm looking at the right things. And then we could use perhaps a second inspection, which is more focused to deal with specific matters that are raised at the inquiry. Nearer the time, I will ask Mr. Trinick and his and the applicant, in consultation with others, to prepare a site inspection itinerary. Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Trinick?
It does, sir. I think the unaccompanied bits are the ones where you need the summer and autumn as opposed to the winter weather.
Yes.
Wise to get it done. The accompanied bits, I presume, are likely to be the lower level visits as opposed to the high level visits, so that can be left till later.
Mr. Finley?
Yes, it may just, we'll give some thought to the extent to which the visits we suggest there do need to be accompanied visits, but yes, and it may be an accompanied site visit to actually get on the site. I don't know whether particular arrangements need to be made to access the site itself. Mr. Trinick, no doubt, may be able to assist with that.
I don't know, but I will find out.
Okay, thank you both very much. For the Community Council, Mr. Udrich Pereira, any thoughts on site inspections?
A site inspection would be most appreciated.
And if we were to have an accompanied inspection, you'd want to join that?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, just a few miscellaneous items now. As I've mentioned a couple of times during the course of our discussion, I will prepare a note of the points discussed at today's meeting, including the proposed procedures, the timetable, and I'll also include some hyperlinks to the relevant guidance that I've referred to. I'll also address the issue about the representations for the benefit of the lost residents. The notes, which in effect will be a procedure notice, will be an important reference for all parties, as it will record all of the main procedural steps required to be taken. So for the avoidance of doubt, I don't intend to issue a separate procedure notice. The notes of the meeting will be published on the DPA website. Now, on receipt of the notes, parties will have 14 days to confirm whether they wish to take part in the inquiry and hearing sessions. And it is important to respond within the specified time to guarantee participation in the inquiry. And the proceedings will also be advertised in the local press in due course. Is there any comments or any questions about the note of the meeting from anybody? Okay. Just a word about contacts. All contact with the EPA should be through Karen Cowie. She's the case officer for this application. Karen's going to be away over the summer months, so in her absence, you should contact Jane Anderson. And again, I'll include both Karen and Jane's contact details at the end of the note. And you'll be able to email or ring Jane about any queries that you may have. Now, for all others, I'm presuming that you're content to be contacted by email. I've noticed that some of the email addresses are personal accounts. I just wanted to check that everybody's content for their personal email addresses to be circulated to others to allow the necessary exchanges of documents to take place. I noticed that certainly Dr. Valensovitz appears to have a personal email account. And I'll clarify that with him in due course. But for those of you that do use personal email accounts, are you happy for those to be circulated to other parties? Mr. Finlay, on behalf of the residents and anybody else. I can see that Ms. Royce is
Yes.
saying something.
Yes, yeah, there's no problem.
No problems at all.
Great.
Okay, that just leaves me to ask if there's any business that anybody has, any questions they'd like to raise before we close the meeting. Mr. Trinick.
Nothing, sir.
Okay, Mr. Finlay. Okay, super. Mr. Udo Pereira, any questions from the Community Council?
No, it's all makes sense. Thank you very much.
Okay, and perhaps I'll just ask Ms. Royce, is there anything else that you'd like me to follow up on your behalf?
No, that's fine. No.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Thanks for coming along to this meeting today, and I'll now formally close the meeting. So thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.